Okay, I was just wondering about your writing process for your poems. Like, if you like, do you sit down and write it all at once, or do you like come back to them, or how does that work?
Oh, it's some of both. I try and carry a notebook, particularly when I'm outside or traveling, and put ideas in there. Pretty much all of the poems undergo revision, and lots of times you mentioned the 13 ways of looking at a blackbird and spinning off of that, and in pulling together the poems, I've got something called 13 verses from the chapter of river otters, which is influenced in the same way. And in looking at that, I see I started with experiences down, there's a place called Capitol Lake here in Olympia that had a family of river otters that got a chance to see and photograph a few years back. Got intrigued with them, started looking in various places, particularly online, about river otters and the mythology around them, their words that are associated with them. For instance, their homes are called holts, and they're trying to remember the name of their.
Hold on, what are their homes called?
Holt, Holt.
Whoa. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool words associated with otters, or anything you look deeply into. Spraint is another one. Spraint is Spraint. It's what river otters defecate or leave behind when they've eaten. So pieces of crayfish, duck bones, all that stuff. Spraint.
That reminds me, actually, one of the animals we have around here are mule deer. We have a lot of mule deer around here. And there's a particular word for how they move when they're moving swiftly. Does anybody know? It's called stotting. Stotting. Stotting, where they're sort of like doing that prancing gallop thingy. Prancing gallop run. Stotting is this particular word for how they move. So sprain.
One application, yeah. We've got a subspecies of mule deer over here called black-tailed deer, and they do the same thing. But not they're more in the forests and more than out in the open like mule deer. And I've always assumed it had something to do with getting over all the logs and fallen material in the forests over here. But it'd be interesting to understand how that evolved into two different subspecies. Let's see. Anyway, so in going online, I found all these myths, particularly some from Japan, about river otters, and how there's a mythology there that I don't know exactly how it goes, but that river otters can change shape into little people or almost kids that wear certain like straw hats and certain getup, and they play tricks on people, like turning out the lights on the road when they're walking, and going into little grocery stores and like buying tobacco or something. Just these odd, odd for us, but probably perfectly known or understood as tales of river otters in Japan. And I thought it was interesting that these things all seem to have, they're the same distribution as the river otters, which appears to be the Pacific Rim. So anything that triggers your interest or my interest and inspires you to dig deeper into the how people relate to that critter, and special words associated with that critter, special behaviors, and then particularly your observation of them. For instance, the photographs I took, I'd never noticed that when they get wet, their neck and chest can form what look like these little arrowheads, like dozens and dozens of little arrowheads pointed down, with the whitish or lightish hair on the outside and the darkish hair on the inside. All of those things are material that you can use. I mean, you have to make choices about where to include it and how to include it and whether or not to include it at all. But having those materials, letting them percolate in your brain a little bit. I think Gary Snyder talks about getting ideas and having them compost and turn over in your mind for a while, and then sometimes you get something down, and then you get more ideas, include them, see whether or not they work or not. It's a lot about process, and there's a lot of value. For me, there's a lot of value in doing that, because you discover things you would never discovered otherwise, and then you integrate them into your perceptions, your understandings of that part of the world, that part of nature, that part of your life.